PC 3139 William Sampson. An update. 29 German police neo-Nazis suspended after a raid on 34 police stations and private homes. Greater Manchester Police too busy to view crystal clear CCTV footage of car thieves. And a Merseyside PC crashes a police car on a blue light emergency run to get home to dinner. This and more coming up. Don't forget these reports are daily, Monday to Friday. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you do appreciate the work I do, please consider joining the channel Patreon for as little as just £3 per month to help me continue providing this content. Hello ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies, and of course in betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. It is Thursday the 17th of September 2020. PC 3139 William Sampson. I think we all know the name. If you don't, then check this video out when you finish this report for more information. We've all been waiting for almost 7 months for an update on this cretinous cunt, and although I have tried to keep people informed with information, it has not been very forthcoming from the IOPC or South Yorkshire Police Press Office. However, today it seems that PC 3139 William Sampson's investigation by the IOPC into his use of a baton against a 16-year-old Sheffield Wednesday fan head has concluded. Now, I wish I had something good to tell you, but at the moment it seems ranks have closed and there is a bit of an information blackout. All we know at the moment is that Sampson was placed on restricted duties pending the outcome of the IOPC's criminal and misconduct investigations. An IOPC spokesperson did not say when the investigation's findings would be released publicly. What they did say, however, is that we have now finalised our investigation report, which has been shared with South Yorkshire Police. Once this process is complete and we have shared our findings with other interested parties, we will consider releasing further details from our investigation. South Yorkshire Police have, of course, declined to comment. However, I still hope that they all do the right thing, because I really don't want to have to do what I've got planned if they don't. The thing that gets me about this incident is that it's taken so long, yet police can get a member of the public in front of a judge and found guilty of coughing on them, even with no evidence and only their word that it happened at all. But here we had a video that showed Sampson took a huge run up and belted this teenager around the head with his baton. This, police and IOPC, is why people have very little faith in the police. Now, I will of course keep you updated when more information is released. On the 31st of July, we spoke about Roderick Keith, a Police Scotland firearms officer who indecently assaulted a man who he took home to the home he shares with his wife. 51-year-old Roderick was said to have been out in the town on the night in question, drinking alone in a Falkirk sports bar at 3 AM. His 24-year-old victim said he looked up to Roderick and after finding him alone and drunk was concerned about him and so took him home. Roderick's wife let them into the house and then she went to bed and Roderick and his victim sat on the sofa. His victim told the court in July that he must have fallen asleep and he woke up because he felt moving in his groin area. He said he moved Roderick's arm away, questioned what was happening for a few seconds before concluding that he must have been dreaming and so went back to sleep. He told the court that he later woke up on his back with Roderick pretending to be asleep with his hand down his boxer shorts. Well, PC Roderick Keith appeared at Falkirk Sheriff Courts where his 3-day trial has now come to an end. Although Roderick continually denied the assault, Sheriff John Mundy said that he believed the victim was assaulted by him and found Roderick guilty of indecently assaulting the man. Sheriff Mundy said, clearly this is a serious matter and one has to consider the effect it has had on this young man, who must have suffered considerable emotional distress. I'm prepared to go along with the description of this incident as an aberration. In other words, he simply had a moment where he behaved out of character. However, Sheriff Mundy placed Keith on a supervised community payback order for 9 months and added his name to the sex offenders register for 9 months. Roderick has been suspended since the incident came to light in 2018 and remains suspended while he now waits internal disciplinary actions. A spokesperson for Police Scotland said, "We are aware of the outcome of the case and a report will be made to the Assistant Chief Constable. Professionalism and assurance for consideration of conduct proceedings." Popping over to Deutschland now, very briefly, as more than 200 German police were involved in raiding 34 police stations and private homes linked to 11 police staff, where 29 German police were suspended after sharing neo-Nazi images and images of refugees in gas chambers. Over 100 pictures of Hitler, swastikas and other Nazi symbols were shared in the WhatsApp groups, with North Rhine-Westphalia Interior Minister Herbert Reul saying it was a disgrace for the NRW police. This latest incident is one of several of so-called far-right extremism among German security services. Some of the suspects face charges of spreading Nazi propaganda and hate speech. Others are accused of not reporting their colleagues' actions. Mr. Reul has now launched an investigation into the extent of extremism among the state's police, saying that he expected the investigation to find more chats with offensive content. Right-wing extremism and neo-Nazis have absolutely no place in the North Rhine-Westphalia police. Our police, he said, and the authorities had to show a crystal clear political profile that rejected the far right. But nothing about rejecting the far left, I see. Germany's police and security services have faced accusations that they are not doing enough to root out extremists within their ranks. Isn't it funny how police are now more and more using the excuse that they are too busy to deal with incidents? More so, it's the very incidents they actively ask people to report to them. With local and national lockdowns and restrictions on large gatherings being imposed on us, and with almost every police force at some stage or another telling people to report unauthorised gatherings, you would expect them to want to deal with them, especially in light of such a serious health threat like COVID-19. Well, Brighton and Hove Police had a report of an unauthorised gathering of up to 100 people at a house rave over the weekend, but failed to act because they were too busy. Neighbours were said to have been shocked when hundreds of young people turned up to the party on Saturday night, contravening all social distancing rules, only to be told by police when they called to grass them up that it was not a priority. Now, don't get me wrong, I still genuinely think it's ridiculous of the police to be able to curtail our freedoms in this way. The party was organised on Saturday night as a last hurrah before the rule of 6 was introduced. New rules that came into force on Monday say that no more than a total of 6 people from 2 households may gather, which, as we know, is another complete farce. But neighbours were still furious that police failed to respond to their reports with the too busy to attend excuse. One of the neighbours to the party said, "It's an absolute shambles. If the police aren't going to respond to flagrant breaches of COVID laws, then who will? With the number of COVID cases going up, I really fear for the future." Now, I'm not entirely sure what they fear. The deaths are literally non-existent now compared to what was being reported for most of the past 6-7 months, which is why they're now using cases rather than deaths in their reports now. I mean, I wonder how many cases of food poisoning there are today, or how many people having a stroke. I think people should remember that there are still more cases and deaths every day from suicides, Parkinson's disease, alcohol use disorders, even diarrhoea. But you know, the government aren't shoving those numbers in our face daily, so the people dying from those don't matter, do they? In another example of police being too busy, how would you feel if your 30 grand motor was nicked off your drive in full view of your very clear CCTV cameras showing their faces, and when you call the police they tell you that they're too busy to view it? You'd be pretty annoyed, I bet. Well, that's exactly what happened to Anthony Harris, whose 30 grand Mercedes was stolen from his driveway in Bury, Manchester. Caught on camera, 2 thieves using a transmitter and amplifier pressed against a porch window to steal his car in 60 seconds in an area that's said to have been hammered by car thefts in recent weeks. However, when Anthony called Greater Manchester Police to tell them he had high quality footage of the thieves, who are also believed to have been responsible for multiple other thefts in the area, Greater Manchester Police told him they were too busy to view it. It's said that Anthony spoke to the Manchester Evening News, who contacted police to ask why they'd not been to view or collect the footage, and within 2 hours of that discussion, the police allegedly turned up at Anthony's home to collect it. Anthony said, "They suggested I put the footage on social media and let them know if I got any feedback. I realised the police are pulled out with COVID, but when the footage is so clear, surely they should be interested. The most ridiculous thing is that it was Greater Manchester Police who urged us to get CCTV, after my wife's Range Rover and my previous Mercedes was stolen in the same night 3 years ago. Thank God no one was hurt, and it is only a car that has gone. Adding, when the police did come round, they said the 999 call handler who I spoke to had no right to say put it on social media or that they wouldn't attend. They were very apologetic and said they would be requesting the tape of my original call. From CCTV footage that neighbours got, the same thieves were trying on the same night on Ferndale Avenue. His car was stolen using a transmitter relay method, where one thief stands by the car with a transmitter while the second stands close to the house to amplify the signal from the key fob inside. If the fob is close enough to the amplifier, it will detect the signal and it will be able to detect them through doors and walls. It'll amplify it and send it to the accomplice's transmitter, which then effectively becomes the key, making the car think that the real key is nearby. They can just then open the car, push the start button and bugger off. Sussex police have admitted a series of failings during an investigation into the disappearance of 30-year-old Georgina Garsala, who was last seen in Worthing, West Sussex in March 2018. After Georgina went missing, a murder inquiry didn't begin until August 2019, 16 months after her disappearance. Sussex police told the family a review found several faults in the way it handled the disappearance of a 30-year-old who has never been found. Her mother, Andrea, called her for a fresh inquiry, adding, "We put our trust in Sussex police, but they failed us." Sussex police said it acknowledged it was a distressing time for Georgina's family, adding that Chief Constable Joe Shiner would meet with them to discuss the case in October. Key CCTV footage was not reviewed for more than a year, while 9 potentially significant sections of footage were lost, the family said. Other issues included a failure to place the mother of 2 on an Interpol watch list for more than 18 months. Sussex police said the review found that while initial inquiries were proportionate, there were significant missed opportunities in the way CCTV evidence was handled and had resulted in some footage being lost to the investigation. It was impossible to say with any certainty whether or not this would have made a tangible difference to the progress of the investigation, they said. The force received 27 recommendations from the review, but said earlier claims that a number of failings had been identified were incorrect. Andrea Garsala said the family had been left with overwhelming feelings of grief and distress, adding, "We are appalled and dismayed." She said police have clearly failed to take my daughter's case seriously, adding, "The question is why? How can the police lose vital pieces of information?" she added. Sussex police said it rejected any suggestion of racial bias in the case. The family said they were told the investigation had hit a dead end until they passed a new lead to police in recent weeks. A bank account linked to a PlayStation games console, which was in Ms. Garsala's possession on the day she disappeared, made a debit payment within the past 3 weeks, the family said. The family has again been forced to become the lead investigators in their own case, which is a role no mother or sister should be placed or want, Andrea said. An investigation by Sussex Police's Major Crimes Unit continues. A man who tried to report criminal damage to his car has been banned from driving. Former soldier 27-year-old Carl Coombs from Barry, Wales, was frustrated with Welsh police after he tried to report criminal damage to his vehicle. But rather than investigate the damage, the police instead wanted to breathalyse him. Coombs was asked to provide a breath sample, even though there is no evidence that he had been driving, and failed to investigate his claims of the damage. Coombs is said to have made off from police, and an alert was put out to locate him after they refused to turn on their body cams. Another police constable arrived on scene in her police vehicle, left the vehicle to look for Coombs on foot, but left the vehicle unlocked. She was then told that Coombs had been arrested and in his possession were a police-issued sat-nav and breathalyser tubes, which were later confirmed to have been taken from her patrol vehicle. Coombs' defence told the court that he carried out the revenge theft out of frustration. Christian Cormack, defending, said he approached police after his vehicle was damaged by 4 youths. He was not drunk at the time, but officers may have thought something was wrong because of his mental health condition. He felt they were questioning him and asked to breathalyse him. He asked an officer to turn on a body camera, but that request was refused. That led to him running off and taking the sat-nav. Out of frustration, he took it. He had nowhere to go and no use for it. It was born out of his frustration at not being taken seriously. Mr. Cormack said Coombs had served in the armed forces for 4 years before he left and later suffered mental health problems. Coombs admitted failing to provide a specimen of breath and theft, and even though there seems to be no question as to whether he had been drinking or not, he was ordered to pay a total of £249 to cover a fine, costs and a surcharge, and was also banned from driving for 12 months. Just a quick note to Nigel, who sent the link to this story in an email. I'm glad you've had an apology for your situation with the police. I am of course hoping that the IOPC pull their finger out and deal with that investigation properly and come to the right conclusion. After Kit Malthouse and Pretty Useless Patel suggesting that people should grass on their neighbours if they're seen to be allegedly breaking new COVID rules, and yesterday's report explaining how the Police Federation have asked people not to call the police as it can divert resources from real crimes, Boris Johnson has now said that people should not be grassing their neighbours unless there is an Animal House type gathering taking place, and instead to try and speak to your neighbours first. The latest legislation gives police powers to intervene where there are groups of more than 6 people, barring some exceptions. But Bojo has now said that I have never much been in favour of sneak culture myself. What people should do in the first instance is obviously, if they are concerned, is raise it with their friends and neighbours. But I think what is reasonable for anyone to do is if they think there is a serious threat to public health as a result of their neighbours' activities, if there is some huge kind of Animal House party taking place, as I am sure, hot tubs and so forth, and there is a serious threat to public health, then it's reasonable for the authorities to know. For reference to those curtain twitchers watching this, Animal House is a film from my year of birth, 1978, an American comedy about an outrageous frat house parties. If you've seen any films about US college or universities and have heard about frat houses or sorority houses, then you're going to know exactly what kind of party I'm talking about. Merseyside Police Constable PC John Byrne could be facing the sack after he crashed his police car running on blues on twos when he had no legitimate reason to be running on response. PC Byrne was said to have just come to the end of a 12-hour shift but faced an additional 2 hours of paperwork when his wife texted him a picture of his dinner on the table. He then decided, in all his infinite wisdom, to engage 999 mode, drive at 80 miles an hour through Liverpool to get back to the station quickly, before running a red light and crashing with another vehicle. Now, don't get me wrong, that laugh was not for the poor victim of this, but rather the fact that the dumbass Byrne even did this in the first place. The incident happened at around 8 PM on November the 2nd last year. Prosecutor James Priest told Manchester Crown Court the defendant was working as a police officer when he and a colleague, PC May, left St Anne Street Police Station custody suite, where they had processed some arrests made earlier in their shift. The vehicle was travelling along Menlove Avenue when PC Byrne activated the police lights, without having proper reason to do so. PC May, sitting in the passenger seat, suggested in her witness statement that she had challenged the driver, but before long, the car, with its emergency lights still activated, crashed into a BMW driven by a member of the public on Allerton Road. PC May said her colleague slammed on the brakes, but could not prevent the crash. Photographs taken at the scene are said to suggest the Hyundai had collided with the right-hand side of the BMW. Mr Priest pointed to 3 features of the crash. One, that the emergency lights had been activated without there being a proper reason to use them. Standard behaviour. The second feature was that a report from the data recorder of the police car had captured that it had reached speeds of up to 80 miles an hour on Menlove Avenue, despite a 40-mile-an-hour limit. Standard behaviour. The report also described a period of braking to 30 miles an hour, consistent with approaching a junction before accelerating again as the road bends right and crosses a junction. The vehicle then underwent heavy braking to a speed of 18.9 miles an hour at the moment of impact. The prosecutor said the third feature was that the police car went through a red light at a junction. Both cars suffered significant damage. Mr Priest said further police officers were called to the scene, where PC Byrne admitted to attending officers he had spent time processing an arrest and wanted to get off duty. During a police interview, he admitted he had activated the emergency lights without a police need to do so. He said he had been on a 12-hour shift, and each arrest he had been involved in earlier that night had involved a property search. He said he was tired and hungry. PC Byrne suggested the BMW was travelling at high speed itself, as he didn't see it until the last second, but he went on to add that he did not want to apportion blame to the driver. How considerate. Richard Orme, defending, told the court his client now faced a disciplinary hearing and could be sacked. He remains on restricted duties without contact with the public and is not allowed to drive. Boo-hoo? Sorry, are we supposed to feel sorry for him now? He wishes to apologise to the court for his poor decision making on the day in question, said Mr Orme. He pointed out that the officer had been helping the force deal with the pandemic by distributing PPE to fellow officers. Oh well then, drop the case. I mean, anyone who's doing what they've been asked to do, as clearly he would have been asked to distribute it from police stores rather than going out and buying it himself and then distributing it whilst he was on duty and supposed to be doing other tasks, deserves the full leniency of the court and should be allowed to resume his role back behind the wheel of a 2-ton guided missile. Mr Orme said it was no excuse, but pointed out his client had spent some time working a 12-hour shift pattern due to Merseyside Police's concerns about gun crime in the city at the time. On the day in question, the officer had not eaten and been involved in 2 arrests and house searches and the attendant paperwork, he said. When the accident happened, his client had been on his way from the custody suite to a police station to complete the paperwork, which was going to take a further 2 hours, the court was told. Mr Orme said the PC had received a photo from his wife that night of a dinner table at a time when he was yet to inform his partner he was going to be late yet again because of the yet to be completed paperwork. His client then made a foolish decision to activate the vehicle emergency light, said the barrister. He's never done it before, that we know of, and bitterly regrets his decision. The only reason he did it was due to the fact that in November last year his marriage was under a considerable amount of strain. He and his wife are now in counselling through their church, said Mr Orme. The barrister quoted from a witness statement what his client has said at the scene of the crash. To be honest with you, we were on our way back to the station. His client felt deeply shamed, he said. PC Byrne, the court heard, was a devout Christian who did a lot of charity work. Oh, here it comes. Excuses. Originally from Devon, he first joined the RAF to provide ground support for Special Forces aircrew. He was also a member of the Queen's Colour Squadron when he performed ceremonial roles like guarding Buckingham Palace, Tower of London and St James's Palace, said Mr Orme. After an honourable discharge from the RAF, he joined Merseyside Police, where he acted as a proactive, honest man of integrity, said Mr Orme. His client had committed a moment of reckless decision-making, not for some fun, but to get back to the police station to complete 2 extra hours before going home to an empty dinner table. The judge, Miss Recorder Mary Loram, QC, told PC Byrne, your job was to protect the public from harm. However, on November the 2nd last year, you did the opposite of that, and you endangered the safety of members of the public, particularly other road users. The judge accepted the defendant had been suffering from marriage difficulties and had been working long hours. There it is. Marriage difficulties, roughly translated, he was feeling a little depressed. She continued, you wanted no more than to go home to your wife as soon as you could. It's not an excuse, but it's important to put cases such as this into context. PC Byrne of Bishop Road in St Helens, who admitted 1 count of dangerous driving, was disqualified from driving for 12 months and handed a 12-month community order. He must also carry out 40 hours of unpaid work and must pass an extended driving test before he will be allowed back on the roads. And he must also pay £535 in costs. Big thank you to all of channel supporters, especially channel patron supporters. Your support is truly appreciated and goes a long way to help with the channel. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials. Good night, all. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video, there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.